When the Billionaire's twins were born paralyzed and couldn't speak, doctors told him they'd never move again. For years, he believed them, until one night, he walked into their room and saw the maid doing something that made his blood run cold. Everyone in New York knew the name Alexander King, a man with everything money could buy and nothing that truly mattered. He was the kind of billionaire who could shut down Wall Street with a single call, but inside his glass mansion stood the only thing he couldn't control: two silent, motionless children. His twins, Ethan and Emma, had been born into wealth, but cursed with stillness. Their bodies were fragile, their eyes empty, and their lips never formed a word. The doctors said it was hopeless, complete paralysis. They'd never walk, never talk, never live a normal life. Alexander tried everything. He hired the world's best neurologists, paid millions for experimental surgeries, even flew in a spiritual healer from India once, though he'd never admit that publicly. But nothing worked. Every night, he'd stand beside their beds, staring at their tiny bodies connected to machines, praying for something, anything, to change. His wife, Clara, couldn't take the pain. She began drinking, disappearing for days, until finally one morning, Alexander found a note on the kitchen counter. "I can't live in this silence anymore." From that day, he changed. The charming billionaire who once smiled for magazine covers became a man of stone. He filled his days with meetings, business deals, and numbers, because numbers didn't cry. They didn't hurt. But when night fell and the mansion grew quiet, he'd walk past the twins' room and feel the crushing weight of their silence. He hired nurses, one after another. None stayed long. Some said it was too depressing. Others claimed the house felt cursed. Eventually, only the machines and the quiet hum of monitors kept his children company. Until one morning, the head housekeeper, Mrs. Warren, introduced a new maid. Her name was Maria. She was young, soft-spoken, and had the kind of eyes that carried both kindness and sadness. Her resume wasn't impressive. She'd worked in small homes before, never for billionaires. Alexander barely looked at her. She was just another staff member in a house full of strangers. Maria's job was simple: clean the twins' room, change their sheets, feed them through their tubes. But what no one expected was how she began to talk to them. At first, the nurses thought it was silly. Maria would sit between the twins and speak softly as if they could hear her. She'd tell them stories, sing old songs in a language no one recognized, and sometimes hum while cleaning. It was harmless, sweet, even, but meaningless. Or so everyone thought. One day, one of the nurses noticed something strange. As Maria spoke, Ethan's eyes followed her. Just slightly, but it was movement. Then Emma blinked twice in rhythm with Maria's song. The nurse froze, thinking she was imagining it. But when she told Maria, the maid just smiled gently and said, "Maybe they're listening." A week later, during the night shift, the security guard was watching the camera feeds when he saw something that made him sit up straight. On screen, Maria was in the twins' room again, this time holding a small wooden flute. She played softly, a haunting melody that filled the room. And for the first time in years, the twins smiled. It was faint, barely visible, but real. Their lips curved ever so slightly. The guard rubbed his eyes and replayed the footage again and again. The next morning, he ran to Mrs. Warren and showed her. "You have to see this," he said, voice shaking. When Mrs. Warren watched it, she couldn't believe what she saw. The twins' monitors were stable, their eyes tracking Maria's movement, their muscles twitching. It wasn't random, it was response. That evening, when Alexander returned home, Mrs. Warren tried to tell him, "Sir, there's something you should see." He was irritated. "Mrs. Warren, if this is about staffing again, I don't care. Please, sir, just 1 minute. It's about your children." Those words hit him like a thunderclap. He followed her to the security room. The footage played silently on screen. Maria sitting between the twins, playing her flute, humming gently. Then Alexander saw it. Ethan's fingers moved, curling slightly toward her. Emma's eyes blinked in perfect rhythm. Alexander's jaw tightened. His pulse raced. "This must be some kind of trick," he muttered. But he couldn't look away. He'd spent years staring at lifeless bodies, and now, something was changing. Something he couldn't explain. That night, after everyone went to bed, Alexander couldn't sleep. He got up, walked through the silent mansion, and stood outside the twins' door. The light inside was dim. Through the crack, he saw Maria sitting by Ethan's bed again, whispering something softly. Then she placed her hands gently over his heart and began to pray in her language, words that sounded ancient and powerful. And then it happened. Ethan's hand moved. Not a twitch. A real, slow movement. His small fingers wrapped weakly around Maria's wrist. Alexander's breath caught. His heart pounded. He pushed the door open. "What are you doing?" he demanded. Maria gasped, jumping up. "Sir, I didn't mean to." He strode closer. "What did you do to my son?" "Nothing, sir," she said, trembling. "I was only praying. I would never harm them." "Praying?" He glared at her. "You think prayers will fix what millions couldn't?" She met his eyes bravely. "Sometimes faith does what money can't." For a moment, silence filled the room, so thick he could hear his heartbeat. Then, with a cold voice, he said, "You're fired. Leave tomorrow." Tears filled Maria's eyes. "Please, sir, just give me 1 week. If nothing changes, I'll go. But if I'm right, your children will move again." Alexander almost laughed. He wanted to throw her out immediately. But then, he looked at his son's small hand, still slightly curled, still holding life. He hesitated. "1 week," he said finally. "If I see anything strange, you'll regret it." Maria bowed her head. "Thank you, sir." Alexander turned and left the room, his mind spinning. He didn't believe in miracles. But deep down, for the first time in years, a spark of something dangerous flickered inside him. Hope. And what he saw the next night would change his life forever. The next morning, Alexander barely touched his coffee. His mind was spinning from what he'd seen the night before. The maid's strange whispering, the movement in Ethan's hand, that impossible spark of life. He told himself it was nothing. A trick of the light. A random muscle spasm. That's what the doctors always said when hope tried to sneak back into his heart. But deep down, something in him refused to settle. He spent the day in his office, but he couldn't concentrate. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Maria's hands glowing faintly in the night light, her lips moving in quiet prayer. And his son, his lifeless son, grabbing her wrist like he was begging her not to stop. By evening, he couldn't resist. He decided to test her. He told Mrs. Warren to cancel the nurse's night shift. "I'll handle the twins tonight," he said calmly. Mrs. Warren blinked. "You, sir?" "Yes," he said. "And make sure Maria doesn't know I'll be watching." When the mansion went quiet, Alexander set up one of his hidden cameras, discreetly tucked inside a flower vase near the twins' beds. He sat in his study, watching the live feed on his laptop. At exactly 9 p.m., Maria entered the room. She was carrying a small bowl of warm water, a towel, and that same wooden flute. She didn't know she was being watched. She sat between the twins, dipped the towel, and gently wiped their hands and faces. She spoke softly, words filled with warmth, as if the children could hear her. "Ethan, you look stronger today," she whispered, smiling. "And Emma, I think I saw your eyes move when I sang yesterday." Her voice trembled slightly, as if she truly believed they could understand. Then she lifted her flute and played the same haunting tune. This time, Alexander watched closely. And again, it happened. Ethan's head shifted slightly to the right. Emma's fingers twitched, small movements, but real. Maria didn't panic. She smiled. "See," she said softly. "You're waking up, little angels. Don't stop now." Alexander's heart pounded. He stood up, pacing the study. He didn't know whether to feel joy or fear. Something impossible was happening under his roof, and he didn't understand it. The next morning, he summoned the family doctor. Without mentioning Maria, he asked for new tests, neurological scans, reflex checks, everything. The doctor examined the twins carefully, frowning in surprise. "Sir," he said, flipping through the reports, "their brain activity has increased, slightly, but noticeably. This wasn't here before." Alexander stared at him. "Are you saying they're improving?" "I'm saying," the doctor said cautiously, "something is changing. But I can't explain why." That night, Alexander didn't go to his room. He sat in the hallway outside the twins' door, listening. Inside, Maria sang again. Not in English. Her words sounded ancient, flowing like water. Between verses, she told the children stories about hope, about faith, about miracles. She told them about her village, far away in the mountains of the Philippines, where her grandmother had once healed a boy who couldn't walk by praying over him every night for a month. "My grandmother said every soul carries a light," Maria whispered. "Sometimes, it just needs someone to believe in it." As Alexander listened, something in his chest cracked open. He hadn't believed in anything for years. Not God, not fate, not love. But now he wasn't sure. The next morning, Maria found him waiting in the twins' room. "Sir," she gasped. "I didn't know you were here." He studied her. "What are you doing to them, Maria? Don't lie to me." She hesitated, then said softly, "I'm just helping them remember how to live." "That's not an answer," he snapped. "You're not a doctor. You're a maid. How do you explain their movements? Their brain scans improving?" Maria lowered her gaze. "Because I believe in something stronger than science. Sir, sometimes the soul listens even when the body doesn't." Alexander exhaled sharply. "So you're saying this is what? A miracle?" She met his eyes. "Maybe. Or maybe it's love." Her words hit him harder than he expected. Love. The one thing he had run from since his wife left, since his heart turned cold. He didn't know what to say, so he left. But that night, he couldn't stay away. He returned quietly and stood in the shadows while Maria sang. And then, something extraordinary happened. Ethan's lips moved. Not words, but a faint sound. A moan. A breath. The machines registered it instantly, the first vocal sound his son had ever made. Maria gasped, covering her mouth. "Sir," she whispered, realizing Alexander was there. "Did you hear that?" He rushed to the bedside, staring at his son. "Ethan? Ethan, can you hear me?" The boy's eyes moved toward him. For the first time, Alexander saw something shining in those eyes, recognition. He felt his knees go weak. He reached out, touching his son's hand. It was warm, alive. Maria smiled through tears. "He's coming back, sir." "They both are. But you have to believe it too." That night, for the first time in 7 years, Alexander didn't go to his study. He sat between his children, listening to Maria sing, watching Ethan's fingers twitch, Emma's eyelids flutter. Every small movement felt like a miracle. But not everyone in the mansion was happy. The next morning, Mrs. Warren cornered Maria in the hallway. "Whatever you're doing in that room," she hissed, "you'd better stop. Mr. King is losing his mind over you." Maria frowned. "I'm just helping the children." "Helping?" Mrs. Warren scoffed. "You think the richest man in New York needs help from a maid? You're playing with fire, girl." Maria's hands trembled, but her voice was steady. "I don't care about his money. I care about those children." That night, when Alexander came home, Mrs. Warren told him everything. "Sir, that maid is getting too close to the children. And to you. I think she's manipulating you." Alexander's temper flared. "Enough. She's done more for them in a week than any of you did in years." Mrs. Warren fell silent, but the doubt had been planted. Later that night, Alexander sat in his dark study, staring at the security feed again. He watched Maria whisper, pray, and play her flute. His heart wanted to believe, but his mind whispered, what if she's lying? He poured himself a drink, his reflection trembling in the glass. "What are you, Maria?" he muttered. "A healer or a fraud?" He didn't know yet, but the answer was coming. Because the next morning, he would wake to screams and find something in his children's room that defied everything he believed in. The next morning, Alexander was jolted awake by a scream. It wasn't loud, it was fragile, almost broken, but it came from his twins' room. For a man who had lived in silence for years, that sound was like thunder from heaven. He rushed through the hallway, heart pounding, nearly knocking over a vase as he pushed open the door. Maria stood frozen beside the twins' beds, tears streaming down her face. Ethan was making small, gasping noises, his throat straining, his lips trembling. Beside him, Emma's eyes darted rapidly from side to side. "Sir," Maria cried, her voice trembling. They tried to speak. Alexander ran to his son's bed. "Ethan, Ethan, can you hear me?" The boy's eyes met his. For a long, breathless moment, father and son stared at each other, and then Ethan made a sound. It wasn't a word, just a rough, broken syllable, but it was real. Alexander fell to his knees, gripping the bed rail, tears flooding his eyes. Oh my God, you're alive." Maria knelt beside him, whispering softly, "He's always been alive, sir. You just couldn't hear him." For the first time in 7 years, Alexander King, the man who built empires, collapsed like a child, crying openly in front of his maid. Over the next few days, the mansion was filled with a strange, hopeful energy. Doctors came and went, baffled by the sudden progress. Brain scans showed higher activity than ever before. The therapists were stunned. Ethan's fingers were responding to touch, and Emma's eyes followed movement with precision. The story began spreading quietly among the staff. The twins were improving, and the maid was at the center of it all. But not everyone believed. Mrs. Warren, the housekeeper, watched Maria suspiciously. Every night, she'd peek through the door, seeing the young woman kneeling between the twins, whispering prayers, touching their hands. To her, it looked wrong, like witchcraft. One night, she stormed into Alexander's office. "Sir, this has gone too far," she said sharply. "You need to stop her before something terrible happens." Alexander frowned. "Something terrible? She's healing my children. You call this healing?" Mrs. Warren snapped. "I saw her lighting candles last night, singing strange words. You don't know what kind of spell she's casting on this family." Alexander slammed his hand on the desk. "Enough. Maria has done more for my children than you or anyone else. If you can't respect her, you can leave." Mrs. Warren went pale but didn't speak again. She turned and stormed out, muttering under her breath, "You'll regret this, sir. Mark my words." That night, the mansion felt different, tense, uneasy. The air itself seemed to hum. Alexander couldn't sleep. He kept replaying Maria's words, her voice, that haunting melody she always played on her flute. At 2 a.m., he rose from bed and walked to the twins' room. The door was slightly open. Inside, the room glowed with soft candlelight. Maria was kneeling between the twins again, her eyes closed, hands gently resting on their foreheads. The twins' faces looked peaceful, their breathing calm and steady. Alexander hesitated, but then he saw it. A faint shimmer in the air, like heat waves, dancing above the twins. It lasted only a second, but it made his blood run cold. He took a step forward, and the floor creaked. Maria opened her eyes immediately. "Sir," she gasped, standing quickly. "You shouldn't be here right now." "What is this?" he demanded, pointing at the flickering light. "What did you just do?" Maria's eyes filled with tears. "Please, sir, don't be afraid." "Afraid?" he snapped. "You're praying in my children's room with candles at 2 in the morning. Tell me the truth. What are you doing to them?" Maria took a shaky breath. "When I was little," she said, "my grandmother told me that every soul has a light. But sometimes, pain covers it, like clouds hiding the sun. I'm not using magic, sir. I'm just helping their light remember how to shine." Alexander stared at her, struggling to breathe. "And what if you're wrong? What if you're hurting them?" She shook her head. "Then I'll leave tonight." "But please, sir, look at them. Really look." He turned slowly toward the twins. Their faces were calm, their fingers twitching gently in rhythm with Maria's soft humming. Emma's hand was resting on Ethan's arm, a movement she could never make before. Alexander's anger melted into confusion and then awe. He whispered, "How is this possible?" Maria smiled faintly. "Because you finally let faith into this house." He didn't reply. He stood there in silence, feeling something he hadn't felt in years, peace. But the peace didn't last. The next morning, chaos erupted. The twins' nurse burst into Alexander's study, her face pale as paper. "Sir, come quickly." He ran down the hall and froze at the doorway. The twins' monitors were beeping wildly. Their heart rates were racing. Maria was standing over them, panicking, her hands trembling. "I don't understand," she cried. "They were fine last night. Doctors were called immediately. They rushed in, adjusting wires, shouting orders." For a terrifying moment, Alexander thought he was losing them. He grabbed Maria's arm. "What did you do?" She shook her head, sobbing. "Nothing, sir. I swear. I just sang to them like always." The doctors pushed him back. "Sir, please, let us work." After 30 agonizing minutes, the monitors stabilized. The twins' breathing steadied. Everyone exhaled in relief. The head doctor turned to Alexander. "They're stable for now. But this kind of fluctuation, it's unusual. Something's triggering their nervous systems in ways we don't understand." Alexander's head spun. His hope had turned into fear. Maria was standing by the wall, eyes red, hands trembling. "Sir," she whispered, "I didn't hurt them. Please believe me." He stared at her, torn between trust and terror. "I don't know what to believe anymore." That night, the mansion went silent again. No music, no prayers, just the cold hum of machines. Maria sat in her small room, clutching her wooden flute, whispering, "Please, God, don't take them now." Down the hall, Alexander poured himself a drink, staring at the reflection of his children's room in the glass window. He wanted to believe in her. He needed to. But for the first time, doubt was winning. And while he sat there, lost in fear, a shadow moved outside the twins' door. Mrs. Warren. She opened the door quietly, carrying something in her hand, one of the candles Maria had left behind. She whispered coldly, "Let's see how holy your little miracle really is." She blew out the candle. The room went dark, and in that darkness, something stirred, something that would change everything. The mansion was silent, too silent. The kind of silence that feels heavy, like the air itself is holding its breath. When Mrs. Warren blew out the candle and slipped away, she didn't notice the change in the air behind her. The moment the light vanished, both twins started trembling. Their monitors flickered, beeping erratically, the sound echoing through the hall like a warning. In his study, Alexander shot up from his chair as alarms blared across the mansion. He sprinted down the corridor, heart pounding, and burst into the twins' room. The sight froze him in place. Ethan's hand was shaking uncontrollably, Emma's eyes wide open, tears streaming down her pale cheeks. Both children were gasping for air, as if trapped between two worlds. The nurses rushed in seconds later, trying to stabilize them. "What happened?" Alexander shouted. "Why are they crashing again?" No one answered. Chaos filled the room. Then Maria came running in from the servants' quarters, her face drained of color. The moment she stepped inside, the monitors flickered again, but this time, they steadied. The children's breathing began to slow. Everyone stopped and stared. Alexander's eyes went from the twins to Maria. What did you just do?" Maria didn't speak. She walked to the side of the bed, touched Ethan's forehead, and whispered something softly. Within seconds, both twins relaxed. Tears filled her eyes. "Someone disturbed the energy in this room," she whispered. The flame was protecting them. Alexander blinked in disbelief. Protecting them? "Maria, this isn't a fairy tale. This is science." But deep down, his certainty was cracking. The twins were calm again. Whatever she did, whatever she was doing, it was working. Mrs. Warren appeared in the doorway, pale and trembling. "Sir, I didn't mean. I just thought." Alexander's face turned red with fury. "You what?" he roared. "You touched their room?" She stammered. "I just blew out one candle. I thought it was nonsense." Before she could finish, Alexander pointed to the door. "Get out of my house. Now." "But, sir, now," he shouted, his voice echoing through the marble halls. Mrs. Warren fled, sobbing. Maria stood in stunned silence, still holding Ethan's tiny hand. The only sound left in the room was the soft hum of machines. Alexander rubbed his face, exhausted. "I don't understand any of this." Maria looked at him, eyes shimmering with tears. "Sir, you don't have to understand. You just have to trust." He turned to her sharply. "Trust? After everything? You expect me to just—" Her voice cut him off, firm but kind. "You've trusted science, money, and power your whole life. Where did it get you? Maybe it's time to trust something else." For a long moment, they just stared at each other. Two broken souls standing on opposite sides of a miracle neither could explain. Later that night, after the nurses settled the twins, Alexander found Maria sitting quietly in the garden, staring at the stars. She looked tired, drained, but peaceful. He approached slowly. "Tell me something," he said quietly. "Who are you, really?" She hesitated. "Just a maid, sir." "No," he said. "You're not. I've seen maids. You're different. You said something about your grandmother before. About healing." Maria nodded slowly. "I grew up in a small village in the Philippines. My grandmother was known as a Hilat, a traditional healer. She used prayer, herbs, and touch to help people when doctors couldn't. My mother called it nonsense, but I saw things I couldn't explain. A paralyzed boy walking again. A blind girl saying she could see light." Alexander frowned. "And you think you inherited that?" Maria looked down at her hands. "I don't know. I never tried to use it. Not until I met your children. The first time I touched Ethan's hand, I felt something. Like his soul was still fighting to come back." She looked up at him, tears glistening. "I couldn't walk away." Alexander's throat tightened. "And why didn't you tell me? Would you have believed me?" she asked softly. He didn't answer. Because he knew the truth, he wouldn't have. For a moment, they stood there in silence, the night breeze carrying the faint hum of city lights in the distance. Then Maria said, "They're not cured yet. Their bodies are still weak. But their spirits are awake now. If you keep believing, they'll come back completely." "Believing in what?" Alexander whispered. In them, she said simply. And in yourself. Her words hit him like a wave. He hadn't believed in himself, or anything, since the day his wife walked out. The next morning, Alexander did something no one in his staff had ever seen. He canceled all his meetings. He spent the entire day in the twins' room, talking to them, holding their hands, telling them stories about the world outside. Maria was there too, quietly singing in the background. Hours passed. The twins' eyes followed him as he spoke. And then, while Alexander was describing a sunrise in Paris, Ethan made a sound again, a small, hoarse whisper. Dad. The word was broken, breathless, but it was real. Alexander froze. His heart stopped. He turned slowly, eyes wide. Ethan? Say it again. The boy's lips quivered. Dad. The sound was faint, almost swallowed by the air, but it was enough to break Alexander completely. He fell to his knees, sobbing into his son's tiny hand. Maria cried quietly in the corner. She didn't need to say anything. The miracle was unfolding right in front of them. That night, the mansion felt alive again. The air was warm. The silence was gone. But the miracle came at a price. Maria began to grow weaker. Her face looked pale, her hands trembled, and her voice cracked when she sang. She tried to hide it, but Alexander noticed. What's happening to you? He asked one evening. Maria smiled weakly. Healing takes energy, sir. Sometimes it takes a piece of you. His eyes widened. No, you can't mean. She shook her head gently. Don't worry. I've been given a gift. And gifts are meant to be used. Alexander wanted to argue, to stop her, but she just smiled. A calm, knowing smile, and walked back to the twins' beds. She placed her hands on their hearts, whispered the same prayer she always did, and said softly, Wake up, little ones. It's time. And this time, something extraordinary happened. Ethan's arms lifted, both of them. Slowly, painfully, but fully. Emma's fingers stretched open, her eyes fluttering as she took a deep, steady breath. The machines went wild. The nurses screamed. And Alexander fell to his knees, staring at the impossible. Maria whispered, barely audible, It's done. Then she collapsed. The moment Maria collapsed, time seemed to shatter into slow motion. Alexander rushed forward, catching her before her head hit the marble floor. Her body felt weightless in his arms, too still, too quiet. Maria? Maria? Open your eyes, he cried, shaking her gently. Her lips were pale, her breathing shallow. The nurses surrounded them, one checking her pulse, another calling for the doctor. The twins' monitors beeped softly in the background, steady, strong, alive. Alexander looked between them and Maria, his mind spinning. She saved them, he whispered, his voice breaking. The doctor came running, knelt beside him, and checked Maria's vitals. She's alive, he said after a tense moment. But her body's exhausted. It's like she's burned out every ounce of energy she had. Alexander swallowed hard, gripping her cold hand. Do whatever it takes. Don't let her die. They carried her to the guest room next to the twins, hooked her up to IVs, and watched her fade into unconsciousness. For the next several hours, Alexander sat beside her bed, silent. The man who once commanded boardrooms and built empires now sat helpless, staring at a woman who had nothing, no money, no status, no power, yet had given everything. By sunrise, he looked like a man who'd aged 10 years overnight. When Maria finally stirred, her eyes fluttering open, she found him sitting beside her, holding her hand. Sir, she whispered weakly. Are they okay? Alexander smiled through tears. They're more than okay. You did it, Maria. You saved them. She tried to sit up, but he gently pressed her back. Don't move. You need rest. Tears rolled down her cheeks. Thank God. Thank you, he said softly. I don't even know how to begin thanking you. Maria shook her head. I didn't do it alone. It was your love, sir. You finally let them feel it. Alexander's eyes filled again. I didn't know I still had any love left to give. She smiled faintly. That's the thing about love. It never runs out. It just hides until someone reminds you. He looked at her like a man seeing light for the first time. For years, Alexander had lived surrounded by gold, marble, and luxury, but none of it had ever touched him the way this moment did. The next morning, the news broke across the city. Alexander King's twins show miraculous recovery after years of paralysis. Doctors from every hospital came to examine the children. None could explain it. It's medically impossible, one neurologist said, staring at the scans in disbelief. There's no record of this ever happening. Alexander just smiled quietly and said, some things don't need to be explained. Within weeks, Ethan and Emma were walking. Slowly at first, clumsily, but walking. Then running. Then laughing. The sound of their giggles filled the halls of the mansion like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. Maria, still recovering, sat by the garden window every day, watching them play. One afternoon, Alexander joined her. He looked different now, softer, calmer. No phone in hand, no calls, no business talk. Just a father. They can't stop running, he said with a grin. The doctors keep saying it's a miracle, but I know it's something more. Maria turned to him, her voice gentle. What do you think it is? He looked at her for a long moment, then said, faith. They both smiled. Then his expression turned serious. Maria, when I first met you, I saw you as just another employee. But you taught me something no money could buy. She tilted her head. What's that, sir? He leaned forward. That healing doesn't come from medicine. It comes from the heart. Maria's eyes shimmered. And love, sir. Don't forget love. He nodded slowly. I won't. Over the next few months, Alexander changed everything. He shut down one of his companies, the one responsible for developing luxury medical tech, and redirected his funds to building a children's hospital in New York. He named it the Maria Foundation for Healing Hearts. When reporters asked him why, he simply said, because sometimes miracles need a home. Maria didn't like the attention. She insisted she was just a maid, but Alexander refused to listen. You're the reason my children are alive, he said. That's not just anything. She smiled humbly. Maybe I was just where I was meant to be. The day the hospital opened, the twins, now fully recovered, walked hand in hand down the red carpet beside her. Cameras flashed, people cheered, and the city celebrated the miracle. But for Alexander, the real miracle wasn't what happened to his children. It was what happened to his heart. That night, after the ceremony, he stood in the twins' room, watching them sleep peacefully. Then he walked to the window where the city lights sparkled below and whispered, "Thank you, Maria." Behind him, a soft voice replied, "For what?" He turned. She was standing in the doorway, wearing a simple white dress, smiling faintly. "For giving me back my family," he said. Maria looked at him for a long moment, then whispered, "You gave yourself back, sir. I just reminded you how." He walked over, took her hand, and said, "You're family now too. This house will always be your home." Tears glistened in her eyes. You have no idea how much that means. Outside, thunder rolled softly across the sky, followed by rain, the kind that feels cleansing, renewing, the kind that washes away the pain of yesterday. As lightning flashed across the city skyline, Alexander looked out and realized something profound. For the first time in his life, he wasn't chasing wealth, power, or success. He had already found everything that truly mattered, right there in that room. His children, their laughter, and the woman who taught him that miracles don't always wear white coats. Sometimes they wear Maid uniforms and carry prayers instead of prescriptions. The next morning, Maria left a note on the kitchen counter. It said, "Dear Mr. King, my purpose here is complete. The twins are whole, and your heart is healed. Wherever life takes me next, I will carry your family in my prayers." Maria, Alexander searched for her for months, but never found her again. Some said she returned to her village. Others said she went to help another family in need. But deep down, he knew the truth. Maria wasn't gone. She lived on in every heartbeat of his children, in every smile, in every act of kindness the world would ever know because of what she did. Years later, when Ethan and Emma grew up and took over the hospital, they hung her photo in the main lobby with a plaque that read, "For the woman who believed in miracles and made one happen." And every time Alexander walked through those doors, he whispered the same words under his breath. "Thank you, Maria, for saving us all." If this story touched your heart, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another story that will move your soul. Drop in the comments if you believe miracles still happen, and share this video with someone who needs a little hope today. Because you never know, your share might be the miracle someone's been waiting for.